Eleanor Washington gazed down at the aviation empire she'd just purchased for $60 million. Tears welled as she remembered the flight attendant who'd refused her first-class seat 3 years ago. Sky America Airlines now belongs to the woman you wouldn't serve champagne to, she whispered. Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and transformation, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed discrimination and subscribe to follow Eleanor's journey from humiliation to triumph. How would you react if someone underestimated you based on your appearance? Let's find out what happened next. Eleanor Washington adjusted her pearl earrings as she gazed at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. At 72, her face carried the distinguished lines of wisdom earned through decades as a respected university professor of economics. Her salt and pepper hair was styled in an elegant bob that framed her dark brown face, and despite the arthritis that occasionally troubled her hands, she had dressed impeccably in a tailored navy pantsuit. Today was special. After months of planning, Eleanor was flying from Atlanta to Seattle to visit her daughter Simone and her grandchildren, whom she hadn't seen in person since before the pandemic. With her substantial inheritance from her late husband James and shrewd investments over the years, Eleanor had decided to splurge on a first-class ticket with Sky America Airlines. "You deserve comfort," she told herself, remembering James's words before he passed away 2 years ago. The decision hadn't come easily. Growing up in Jim Crow, Alabama had ingrained caution about placing herself in spaces historically unwelcoming to black folks. Even with her Harvard education and professional accomplishments, Eleanor had experienced countless microaggressions and outright discrimination throughout her life. But times had changed, she reminded herself. Or at least they should have. Eleanor packed her medication, a novel, and her iPad into her designer handbag. The taxi arrived precisely at 9:30, giving her ample time to reach Atlanta International Airport for her noon flight. The driver, a young man named Terrell, was pleasant and respectful, engaging her in conversation about the unseasonably warm April weather. "My grandmother always said April in Georgia is like a moody teenager," Terrell joked, helping Eleanor with her luggage at the terminal drop-off. "Beautiful 1 minute, storming the next." Eleanor tipped him generously and made her way to the Audibert first-class check-in counter. The attendant, a young white woman with a nameplate reading Ashley, greeted her with professional courtesy. "Good morning, Dr. Washington. Your flight to Seattle is on schedule. Would you like a window or aisle?" "Seat?" "Window, please," Eleanor replied, pleased at being addressed by her academic title that she had included in her booking information. Ashley processed her boarding pass efficiently and directed her to the priority security line. The TSA officer was brisk but not unfriendly, and soon Eleanor was making her way to the first-class lounge. She settled into a plush chair with a complimentary coffee and banana bread, savoring the calm atmosphere as she reviewed photos of her grandchildren on her phone. 2 hours later, boarding began. Eleanor gathered her belongings and joined the priority line. The gate agent scanned her boarding pass with a smile. "Enjoy your flight, Dr. Washington." Eleanor walked down the jetway, her excitement building. It had been months since she'd seen Simone and the children, and the thought of hugging her grandkids made her heart swell. She nodded politely to the pilot standing at the aircraft entrance, a tall white man with silver hair who returned her greeting with a cursory nod. As she stepped into the cabin, a flight attendant with blonde hair and a tight smile glanced at her boarding pass. "Welcome aboard," she said mechanically, gesturing toward the rear of the plane. "Economy boarding is almost complete." Eleanor smiled patiently. "I'm in first class, seat 3A. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Brenda Mitchell, looked at Eleanor's boarding pass again, then back at Eleanor with poorly disguised skepticism. Her eyes traveled from Eleanor's face to her sensible walking shoes. "You're sure you're in first class?" Brenda asked, her voice carrying just enough for nearby passengers to hear. Eleanor felt her chest tighten but kept her voice steady. "Yes, I am. Seat 3A. With visible reluctance, Brenda gestured toward the first-class cabin. Eleanor made her way to her window seat in the third row, settling her handbag under the seat, in front of her. The leather seat was spacious and comfortable, and Eleanor allowed herself a small sigh of relief. She watched as other first-class passengers boarded, predominantly white businessmen who were greeted warmly by Brenda. A middle-aged, white man in an expensive suit, took the aisle seat beside Eleanor with barely a glance in her direction. He immediately pulled out his laptop and began typing furiously. Eleanor turned her attention to the window, watching the ground crew load luggage into the plane's cargo hold. Brenda returned to the first-class cabin, offering pre-flight champagne to passengers. She served everyone in the first 2 rows, then deliberately skipped Eleanor's row, moving to serve passengers in rows 4 and 5. When she finished, she turned to head back to the galley. "Excuse me," Eleanor said politely. "I didn't receive any champagne." Brenda turned, her expression cooling. "I'm sorry. What was your seat again?" 3A, Eleanor replied, maintaining her composure despite the growing discomfort she felt in her chest. Brenda glanced at the man beside Eleanor, who now looked up from his laptop with mild interest. "And you're sure you're supposed to be in first class?" Brenda asked again, louder this time. Eleanor felt heat rising in her cheeks. Several passengers turned to look. "Yes," she said firmly. "I purchased a first-class ticket. Here's my boarding pass." She held it out, but Brenda made no move to take it. "Let me check with my supervisor," Brenda said, turning away. Eleanor sat in uncomfortable silence, aware of curious glances from other passengers. The businessman beside her had returned to his laptop, seemingly uninterested in her predicament. Minutes later, Brenda returned with the head flight attendant, a tall man with a receding hairline whose name tag read Tyler Rhodes. "Is there a problem?" Tyler asked, addressing Brenda rather than Eleanor. "This lady says she's supposed to be in first class, but I don't see her on my list," Brenda explained, emphasizing the word lady in a way that made Eleanor flinch internally. "I have my boarding pass right here," Eleanor said, extending it again. Tyler barely glanced at it. "There might have been a mistake at check-in. Let me see your ticket receipt." Eleanor opened her handbag and produced the email confirmation, showing her first-class purchase, complete with the receipt for the considerable sum she had paid. Tyler examined it with furrowed brows while Brenda stood with arms crossed. "This does show first class," he admitted reluctantly, "but our manifest shows some confusion. The system might have upgraded someone by mistake." "I didn't receive an upgrade," Eleanor said calmly. "I specifically purchased a first-class ticket." The businessman beside her finally looked up. "Is there a problem? We're already running late." "No problem, sir," Tyler assured him quickly. "Just a seating confusion we're sorting out." The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing a slight delay due to air traffic control. Eleanor noticed Brenda whispering something to Tyler, who nodded and approached the cockpit. Minutes later, he returned with the pilot Eleanor had seen earlier, whose name tag identified him as Captain Brandon Harris. "What seems to be the issue?" Captain Harris asked, his tone suggesting annoyance at being pulled from his pre-flight routine. Tyler explained the situation in hushed tones that Eleanor couldn't quite catch, though she heard phrases like seating confusion and possible system error. Captain Harris glanced at Eleanor, then at her boarding pass and receipt. "Ma'am," he said, using neither her name nor her title despite both being clearly printed on her documents, "there seems to be some confusion about your seat assignment. For the comfort of all passengers and to avoid further delay, would you mind taking an available seat in economy class? The airline will certainly refund the difference in fare." Eleanor felt as if she'd been slapped. The implication was clear. They simply didn't believe she belonged in first class. "I purchased a first-class ticket," she repeated, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt in her hands. "I confirmed it yesterday. There is no confusion except what's being created right now." Captain Harris exchanged glances with Brenda and Tyler. "Ma'am, I understand, but we need to push back from the gate. We can sort this out once we're airborne." "You can sort it out now by allowing me to sit in the seat I paid for," Eleanor insisted, aware that her heart was racing uncomfortably. The businessman beside her sighed audibly. "Look, can we just get going? I have a connection to make." Captain Harris lowered his voice. "Ma'am, I have to insist. For the safety and comfort of all passengers, please gather your belongings and follow Flight Attendant Mitchell to economy class." The entire first-class cabin had fallen silent. Eleanor felt dozens of eyes on her, but not a single voice rose in her defense. The humiliation burned in her chest like acid. With trembling hands, she gathered her handbag and stood. "This is discrimination," she said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I paid for first class, and I'm being removed because of how I look." "That's not true, ma'am," Brenda said quickly. "It's simply a seating confusion. Please follow me." With as much dignity as she could muster, Eleanor followed Brenda through the first-class cabin, past business class, and into the crowded economy section. She felt the stares of passengers who had witnessed her removal, some sympathetic, others curious, but none intervening. Brenda led her to a middle seat in a row near the back of the plane, between a large man who had already claimed the armrest and a young mother with a fussy infant. "This is the only seat available," Brenda said with poorly disguised satisfaction. "The flight is full." Eleanor sat down, her knees immediately pressing against the seat in front. Her arthritic hip protested at the cramped conditions. The infant beside her began to wail as the mother struggled to calm it. "Can I at least have my carry-on bag?" Eleanor asked, realizing it had been left in the overhead bin in first class. "I'll have someone bring it after takeoff," Brenda replied before walking away. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Eleanor closed her eyes, fighting back tears of humiliation and anger. The large man beside her fell asleep almost immediately, his body heat and bulk making the cramped space even more uncomfortable. The baby continued to cry intermittently, and the mother apologized repeatedly. "I'm so sorry," the young woman said. "Her ears hurt during takeoff. I tried to get a window seat, but they said the flight was full." "It's not your fault," Eleanor assured her, though her hip was now throbbing painfully. Her medication was in her handbag, which was still under the seat she had paid for in first class. An hour into the 4-hour flight, a different flight attendant, a young black woman, finally brought Eleanor's carry-on bag. She handed it over with an apologetic look, but said nothing. Eleanor took 2 pain pills with the small cup of water, offered during the beverage service. The ache in her hip subsided slightly, but the wound to her dignity remained raw and bleeding. Throughout the flight, she caught Brenda walking through the cabin, deliberately avoiding eye contact. As the plane began its descent into Seattle, Eleanor's thoughts turned to her daughter and grandchildren waiting at the airport. She would not let this incident ruin their reunion. She would smile, hug them tightly, and save her tears for later. But as the wheels touched down on the runway, Eleanor Washington made a silent promise to herself. This humiliation would not go unanswered. Rain pattered against the windows of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport as Eleanor made her way through the terminal, her body aching from the cramped economy seat. Despite the physical discomfort, her heart lightened at the sight of her daughter, Simone waving enthusiastically near baggage claim, flanked by Eleanor's grandchildren, 10-year-old Zora and 14-year-old Marcus. "Mom!" Simone called, rushing forward to embrace Eleanor. At 45, Simone was the spitting image of Eleanor in her younger days, though she wore her hair in natural curls, while Eleanor's remained straightened. "We've missed you so much." "Grandma!" Zora launched herself into Eleanor's arms, nearly knocking her over. Marcus, trying to maintain teenage dignity, hung back momentarily before accepting Eleanor's extended arm and joining the family embrace. "My babies," Eleanor murmured, inhaling Zora's strawberry-scented hair and patting Marcus's shoulder, which was now almost level with her own. "Look how you've grown, Marcus. You're going to be taller than your father soon." "Already am," he said with a proud grin, standing up straighter. "By half an inch." Simone took Eleanor's carry-on bag. "How was your flight, Mom? You must be tired." Eleanor forced a smile. "It was fine, dear. Just a long day of travel." "I thought you were flying first class," Simone asked, guiding them toward the parking garage. "You mentioned how excited you were about the extra legroom for your hip." Eleanor hesitated. "There was a mix-up with the seating. I'll tell you about it later." Simone shot her mother a curious glance but didn't press further with the children present. They loaded Eleanor's luggage into Simone's electric SUV and headed toward Simone's home in the Madrona neighborhood, with views of Lake Washington. As they drove, the children caught Eleanor up on school activities, sports, and friends, their excited chatter a balm to her wounded spirit. Simone's husband, Michael, a cardiothoracic surgeon at the University of Washington Medical Center, was waiting at the house with dinner prepared. The beautiful mid-century modern home was filled with the aroma of jambalaya, a family recipe passed down from Eleanor's Louisiana ancestors. "Welcome, Eleanor," Michael said warmly, embracing his mother-in-law. "We've set up the guest suite downstairs so you won't have to navigate the stairs with your hip." "You're all too good to me," Eleanor said, blinking back sudden tears. During dinner, Eleanor focused on her family, asking Marcus about his advanced placement classes and Zora about her burgeoning interest in coding. She complimented Michael on the jambalaya and inquired about his latest research publication. But Simone, ever perceptive, noticed her mother's strained smile and the way her hand occasionally trembled when reaching for her water glass. After the children were excused to finish homework and Michael retreated to his home office to review patient files, Simone poured 2 glasses of red wine and sat beside Eleanor on the patio overlooking the lake. "All right, Mom, what really happened on that flight?" Eleanor took a sip of wine, the rich Cabernet warming her chest. She had intended to keep the incident to herself, not wanting to burden her daughter or mar their precious time together. But, facing Simone's concerned gaze, the dam broke. "They removed me from first class," she said, her voice catching. "I had paid for a first-class ticket, confirmed it yesterday, and had the boarding pass in hand. But they still removed me." Simone's expression darkened as Eleanor recounted the full incident. Brenda's initial skepticism, Tyler's dismissive attitude, Captain Harris's ultimatum, and the humiliating walk to the back of the plane. "Mom, that's blatant discrimination," Simone said, her attorney's mind already categorizing the legal violations. "We need to file a formal complaint immediately. I can draft it tonight." "I don't know, Simone," Eleanor sighed. "What good would it do? It would be my word against 3 airline employees." "It doesn't matter. There are witnesses. Other passengers saw what happened. The airline has records of your ticket purchase. This is textbook discrimination based on race and age." Eleanor gazed out at the rippling waters of Lake Washington, illuminated by the waning moonlight. "I've been fighting these battles my entire life, Simone. I'm tired. And that's exactly why you can't let this slide," Simone insisted, reaching for her mother's hand. "You taught me never to accept injustice quietly. You marched with Dr. King. You integrated your university department. You faced down armed officers during voter registration drives. And now you're going to let some flight attendant with a power trip push you around?" Eleanor smiled sadly at her daughter's passion. "I was younger then, full of fire." "That fire is still in you," Simone countered. "I can see it right now, behind your eyes. You're not just hurt, Mom. You're angry, and you have every right to be." That night, after Simone had gone to bed, Eleanor sat alone in the guest suite, unable to sleep despite the comfortable bed and her physical exhaustion. Her mind kept replaying the incident, Brenda's smug expression, Tyler's feigned confusion, the silent complicity of the other passengers. The humiliation burned fresh in her memory. She reached for her tablet and opened her email, intending to write to the airline's customer service department. But as she began typing, Eleanor realized a standard complaint would likely result in nothing more than a form letter apology and perhaps a voucher for a future flight, a flight she would never take. Eleanor set down her tablet and instead picked up her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the number for Javier Rodriguez, her financial advisor who had helped manage her investments since James's death. Despite the late hour, on the East Coast, Javier answered on the 3rd ring. "Eleanor, is everything all right?" "I'm sorry to call so late, Javier," Eleanor said, "but I need your help with something important." "Of course. What can I do for you?" "I want information about Sky America Airlines, their financial status, stock performance, ownership structure. Everything you can find." There was a pause on the line. "Are you considering an investment in airlines? That's quite a departure from your usual portfolio strategy." "Let's just say I had a revealing experience with their customer service today," Eleanor replied. "I'd like to understand more about the company behind it." The next morning over breakfast, Eleanor shared her experience with Michael and the children. Michael was outraged, immediately offering to contact colleagues who served on various corporate boards. Marcus, surprising everyone, had the most pragmatic response. "You should buy their stock, Grandma," he said between bites of scrambled eggs. Simone laughed. "That's your solution? Give money to the company that discriminated against her?" "Not just some stock," Marcus clarified, his expression serious despite his youth. "A lot of stock. Enough to have a voice in how they operate." Eleanor studied her grandson with newfound appreciation. "That's essentially what I was considering, Marcus. I've asked my financial advisor to research the company." "Really?" Simone looked surprised. "I thought we were filing a complaint." "We can do that too," Eleanor said. "But your son has a point. A complaint might get buried. Money talks in a way that grievances don't." Throughout the day, as they visited Pike Place Market and took a ferry to Bainbridge Island, Eleanor's phone buzzed with messages from Javier. By evening, she had a preliminary report. Sky America Airlines was publicly traded, had been struggling financially even before the pandemic, and had recently received criticism for cost-cutting measures affecting customer service. Their stock was underperforming compared to industry competitors. While Simone put the children to bed, Eleanor and Michael discussed the findings in the kitchen. "It's actually a vulnerable time for them," Michael noted, reviewing the financial data Javier had sent. "Their CEO, Richard Fleming, has been pushing aggressive expansion despite their service issues. Several board members have expressed concerns." "How do you know all this?" Eleanor asked, impressed. Michael smiled. "I serve on the hospital board with Jennifer Liu. Her wife is a financial analyst specializing in transportation. We've discussed the airline industry over dinner a few times." As the week progressed, Eleanor divided her time between enjoying Seattle with her family and conducting research into Sky America. Javier connected her with a specialized investment team that focused on corporate acquisitions. Through their research, Eleanor discovered that Sky America had faced multiple discrimination complaints over the past 5 years, though most had been settled quietly. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table discussing Eleanor's growing interest in airline investments, Marcus asked the question that had been forming in Eleanor's mind. "So, are you going to try to change how they treat people, Grandma?" Eleanor looked at her grandson, seeing James's analytical mind reflected in his thoughtful expression. "What would you suggest, Marcus?" "You need to be an activist investor," he said confidently. "We learned about it in my business class. That's when you buy enough shares to influence company policy or even change management." Simone looked at her son with surprise. "Since when are you so interested in corporate finance?" Marcus shrugged. "Since Grandpa left me those technology stocks that tripled in value, I've been reading about investing." Eleanor laughed, feeling a genuine lightness for the first time since the incident. "Well then, Professor Marcus, what's your specific recommendation?" "First, you don't want them to see you coming," he said seriously. "You should buy shares through different accounts or entities, staying under the reporting thresholds. Then, once you have a significant position, you can push for policy changes or even board seats." The adults at the table stared at Marcus in astonishment. "What?" he said defensively. "I watch financial news." Later that night, Eleanor called. Javier again. "I want to move forward with a strategic investment in Sky America," she said firmly. "Not as a passive shareholder, but with the intention of influencing their corporate culture and practices." "That's a significant undertaking, Eleanor," Javier cautioned. "Are you sure about this?" Eleanor thought about the humiliation she'd experienced, multiplied by countless others who might have suffered similar treatment without her resources to fight back. She thought about her late husband James, who had always encouraged her to use their privilege and wealth for meaningful change. She thought about Marcus, watching and learning from her example. "I've never been more certain," she replied. "I won't just file a complaint. I'll change how they operate." The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jordan Chen's corner office in downtown Seattle. At 43, Jordan had built a reputation as one of the shrewdest investment bankers in the Pacific Northwest, with a specialty in corporate restructuring and acquisitions. His minimalist office, 50 floors above the city, offered spectacular views of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. Eleanor sat across from him, back straight despite her aching hip, while Simone reviewed documents beside her. Michael had connected them through his hospital board colleague, and Jordan had agreed to meet immediately upon hearing the outline of Eleanor's situation. "So, Dr. Washington," Jordan said, leaning forward with his fingers steepled, "you want to acquire a significant stake in Sky America Airlines because a flight attendant was rude to you?" His tone wasn't dismissive, but rather calculating, as if measuring Eleanor's resolve. "Not because she was rude," Eleanor corrected, meeting his gaze steadily. "Because the airline systematically removed a paying customer from her rightful seat, based on racial and age discrimination, then failed to acknowledge or address the issue when contacted." Jordan nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Just checking your conviction. If we're going to do this, I need to know you won't back down when things get complicated. And they will get complicated." He turned to his computer and pulled up a detailed financial analysis of Sky America Airlines. "Your timing is actually quite favorable. Sky America has been struggling since the pandemic. Their recovery has lagged behind competitors due to several factors." He displayed a series of graphs on the large screen mounted on his office wall. "Their customer satisfaction ratings have dropped for 6 consecutive quarters. Employee morale is at an all-time low following controversial cost-cutting measures, and their stock is trading at nearly 30% below pre-pandemic levels, while the industry average is only down 12%. Simone studied the charts with interest. "What about their leadership?" "CEO Richard Fleming is under increasing pressure from the board," Jordan explained. "He was brought in 3 years ago to cut costs and increase profitability. But his slash-and-burn approach has alienated both customers and employees. There are rumors that several board members are considering a vote of no confidence at the next quarterly meeting." Eleanor absorbed this information, her academic mind analyzing the implications. "So the company is vulnerable." "Extremely," Jordan confirmed. "Which means your investment could potentially have outsized influence, but," he cautioned, "it also means they'll be defensive and possibly hostile to any perceived threats to current management." "What would be our first step?" Eleanor asked. "We establish a specialized team," Jordan said, pulling out a notepad. "I'll handle the financial strategy. We'll need legal counsel specializing in corporate governance and discrimination law. I can reach out to my former law school classmate Aisha Johnson," Simone suggested. "She's a partner at Blackwell & Schmidt, specializing in corporate civil rights cases." Jordan nodded approval. "Excellent. We'll also need a PR strategist for when this eventually goes public, industry experts who understand airline operations, and a discreet investigative team to gather additional information about Sky America's practices." "My grandson mentioned buying shares through different accounts to avoid detection," Eleanor said. Jordan raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Your grandson has good instincts. Yes, we'd use various investment vehicles to stay under the 5% threshold that would trigger SEC disclosure requirements. It's completely legal as long as we file the proper paperwork once we cross that threshold." Over the next hour, they outlined a comprehensive acquisition strategy. Jordan would create several investment entities through which Eleanor could purchase Sky America stock gradually. Simone would work with Aisha to prepare potential legal challenges and document the discrimination Eleanor had experienced in exhaustive detail. They would also identify key board members and executives who might be allies or obstacles. "I'd like to involve my grandson Marcus in some capacity," Eleanor mentioned as they wrapped up. "He's shown remarkable interest and insight." Jordan smiled. "Bring him to our next meeting. Fresh perspectives can be invaluable, and it sounds like he has good financial instincts." As they left Jordan's office, Simone looked at her mother with concern. "This is going to be expensive and time-consuming, Mom. Are you sure you want to take this on?" Eleanor thought about the humiliation she'd experienced on that flight, the helplessness she'd felt being marched to the back of the plane, and the smug satisfaction on Brenda Mitchell's face. "This isn't just about me, Simone. It's about every person who's ever been made to feel less than worthy because of how they look or how old they are. I have the resources to fight back in a way most people can't." If not me, then who? The following week saw a flurry of activity. Jordan assembled a team of financial analysts to comb through Sky America's public disclosures, identifying strengths, weaknesses, and potential leverage points. Aisha Johnson joined their growing team, bringing her expertise in discrimination, cases, and corporate governance. What the airline did to you was textbook discrimination, Aisha confirmed after reviewing Eleanor's detailed account. We could file suit immediately if that's what you wanted. I'm considering all options, Eleanor replied, but I'm increasingly convinced that ownership influence might create more meaningful, lasting change than a lawsuit. Marcus, on spring break from school, joined several of their strategy sessions, absorbing the complexities of corporate finance with remarkable speed. He developed a spreadsheet tracking Sky America's stock price movements and market reactions to industry news. Their stock jumped 2% when United announced new fuel efficiency standards, he pointed out during one meeting. Investors seemed to react positively to sustainability initiatives. Jordan nodded approvingly. Good catch, Marcus. That could be useful intelligence for future board proposals. 3 weeks into their planning, Jordan's investigative team made a significant discovery. Through carefully cultivated contacts, they obtained internal Sky America documents, revealing a pattern of discrimination complaints from passengers and employees alike. More disturbing was evidence suggesting that customer service representatives were trained to offer minimal compensation to certain types of complainants, categorized in ways that correlated strongly with race and age. This is explosive, Simone said, reviewing the documents. It suggests systematic discrimination, not just isolated incidents. Eleanor felt her resolve strengthen. This isn't just about changing policies on paper. The entire corporate culture needs transformation. As their strategy progressed, Eleanor's health began to show signs of strain. The stress of planning combined with lingering trauma from the incident triggered several sleepless nights. One morning as she reached for her coffee, her hand trembled visibly. "Mom, are you okay?" Simone asked with concern. "Just tired," Eleanor assured her, "and perhaps a bit overwhelmed by how quickly this is moving." Michael, noticing Eleanor's fatigue, insisted on a full checkup, which revealed elevated blood pressure and signs of stress-related inflammation. "You need to pace yourself," he advised professionally. "This is a marathon, not a sprint." Eleanor agreed to delegate more tasks and focus on her health alongside their developing strategy. She began morning walks around the lake with Zora, who delighted in pointing out different bird species. The gentle exercise and fresh air helped clear her mind and reduce her stress levels. Meanwhile, Jordan had begun the process of acquiring Sky America shares through various investment vehicles. "We've secured approximately 3% of outstanding shares," he reported during their weekly strategy meeting. "We're staying under the radar so far, though there's been some minor chatter in financial circles about unusual trading patterns." What would you do if you were in Eleanor's position? Comment number 1 if you believe she should continue acquiring shares quietly, or number 2 if you think she should make her intentions known immediately. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow Eleanor's journey toward justice. The question is, can one woman's determination change an entire corporate culture? Let's find out as we continue this remarkable story. Aisha's team had established a confidential reporting system for current and former Sky America employees to document discrimination they had witnessed or experienced. The response was overwhelming, with dozens of reports flooding in within days. "The flight attendant who removed you, Brenda Mitchell, appears in multiple complaints," Aisha noted, reviewing the data. "She seems to have a particular pattern of targeting older passengers of color for seat verification or service denial." Eleanor felt a chill run through her. "Has she been disciplined?" "Quite the opposite," Aisha replied. "According to our sources, she was recently promoted to a training position. She now instructs new flight attendants on customer management techniques." The nightmares began that night. Eleanor dreamt of being paraded through an endlessly long airplane cabin, past rows of staring faces, while Brenda Mitchell followed behind her, announcing to everyone that Eleanor didn't belong. She woke at 3 in the morning, heart racing, sheets damp with sweat. Despite these personal challenges, Eleanor remained committed to their plan. During a strategy session in Simone's home office, Jordan announced a significant milestone. "We've acquired just over 5% of Sky America's outstanding shares," he reported. "We've filed the required SEC disclosures, but we've kept the investor identity generic. Washington Family Investments, LLC. It won't immediately trace back to you." "How has the market reacted?" Eleanor asked. "There was a small uptick in trading volume and price, but nothing dramatic," Jordan replied. "The financial press hasn't picked up on it yet. We have a window of opportunity to continue accumulating shares before serious scrutiny begins." Marcus, who had been quietly analyzing data on his laptop, looked up with excitement. "I think I found something important," he said, turning his screen to show the others. "I've been tracking flight attendant transfer requests and resignations. There's been a 63% increase in transfer requests out of crews managed by 4 specific supervisors, including the one who oversees Brenda Mitchell." The adult stared at Marcus, then at his meticulous spreadsheet. "How did you get this data?" Jordan asked, impressed. Marcus grinned. "LinkedIn. I wrote a script that analyzes profile updates from Sky America employees. People post about their job changes all the time." Simone looked at her son with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "That's actually brilliant. It gives us another angle," Aisha noted. "Employee satisfaction and retention directly impact operational costs and service quality. This could be framed as a business issue rather than just an ethical one when we eventually approach the board." As weeks passed, Eleanor's investment team continued to quietly accumulate Sky America stock. Through various entities and careful timing of purchases, they managed to acquire nearly 8% of outstanding shares without triggering significant market speculation. The team also expanded to include Darius Jackson, a former airline executive who provided invaluable insights into industry operations and corporate governance. "Sky America's board is unusual," Darius explained during a strategy meeting. "While most airline boards are dominated by industry veterans and finance people, Sky America has several board members with backgrounds in consumer products and retail. They're likely more sensitive to brand reputation and customer experience issues." "That could work in our favor," Eleanor noted. "Our concerns about discriminatory practices directly impact customer experience and brand perception." Their progress wasn't without setbacks. In early June, while Eleanor was enjoying dinner with her family, she received an urgent call from Jordan. "There's been a leak," he said without preamble. "Someone on Sky America's investor relations team has connected the dots between our various purchasing entities. They've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." Eleanor felt her heart rate accelerate but kept her voice calm. "What's our response?" "We need to accelerate our timeline," Jordan advised. "I suggest we prepare to approach key board members directly before they have time to formulate a defensive strategy." That night, Eleanor barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and contingencies. By morning, their team had prepared detailed briefing documents for each Sky America board member, highlighting both the discrimination Eleanor had experienced and the broader pattern of problems their investigation had uncovered. Aisha had drafted a formal letter requesting board representation based on Eleanor's significant ownership stake, while Jordan prepared financial projections showing how addressing discrimination could positively impact the airline's bottom line. As Eleanor reviewed these materials over breakfast, her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with a New York area code. "Dr. Washington," said an unfamiliar male voice when she answered. "This is Richard Fleming, CEO of Sky America Airlines." Eleanor's breath caught, but she kept her voice steady. "Mr. Fleming, I'm surprised to hear from you directly." "I think we both know why I'm calling," Fleming said, his tone a mixture of cordiality and tension. "Your recent investment in our company has caught our attention." "I'm flattered that the CEO himself would reach out to a shareholder," Eleanor replied evenly. "A shareholder who appears to be attempting to acquire a controlling interest through various shell companies," Fleming countered. "That tends to get my attention." "I'm simply an investor who sees untapped value in your company," Eleanor said, sticking to the script Jordan had prepared for such a call. "Though I do have concerns about certain operational practices that may be limiting that value." There was a pause on the line. "I understand you had an Unfortunate experience on one of our flights recently. That's one way to describe being forcibly removed from a seat I paid for because of how I look, Eleanor replied, her voice hardening slightly. Dr. Washington, if this is about that incident, I can assure you that Sky America takes customer concerns seriously. I'd be happy to arrange appropriate compensation for any inconvenience. This isn't about compensation, Mr. Fleming, Eleanor interrupted. This is about systematic problems in how your airline treats certain passengers. Problems that ultimately affect your bottom line and shareholder value. Another pause, longer this time. I see. Perhaps we should discuss this further in person. I could arrange for our corporate jet to bring you to our headquarters in Dallas next week. That won't be necessary, Eleanor replied. My team will be contacting your board members directly later today. I look forward to a productive dialogue about Sky America's future. Before Fleming could respond, Eleanor ended the call, her heart pounding but a sense of satisfaction warming her chest. The first direct confrontation was behind her, and she had held her ground. When she shared the conversation with her team, an hour later, Jordan nodded approvingly. You handled that perfectly. Fleming was trying to control the narrative and isolate you from the board. By refusing and mentioning our outreach to board members, you've maintained the initiative. Aisha agreed. He was also trying to reduce this to a single customer service incident, rather than acknowledging the systemic issues. Your response made it clear that won't work. As their meeting continued, Marcus burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. You need to see this, he said, pulling up a news website on the conference room screen. The headline read, Mystery investor targets struggling Sky America Airlines. Hostile takeover in the works? It's begun, Jordan said quietly. From here on, we're operating in the public eye. Eleanor took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as she had done countless times throughout her life when facing challenges. Then let's make sure our message is clear. This isn't about revenge, it's about transformation. The Sky America corporate headquarters in Dallas gleamed in the Texas sun, its blue glass facade reflecting puffy white clouds that drifted across the summer sky. Inside the top-floor boardroom, CEO Richard Fleming paced nervously before a table of concerned executives. 12%, he repeated, smacking a printout against his palm. This Washington woman has somehow acquired 12% of our company in less than 2 months, and none of you noticed until she filed her SEC disclosures? Victoria Prescott, the chief financial officer, adjusted her glasses nervously. The purchases were extremely well disguised, Richard. They came through 17 different investment vehicles, none obviously connected. Her team clearly knew what they were doing. And what do we know about her? Fleming demanded, turning to Bradley Wilson, the head of corporate security. Wilson opened a folder containing a hastily assembled dossier. Dr. Eleanor Washington, 72, widow of James Washington, who was a successful biomedical engineer with numerous patents. She was a professor of economics at Emory University for 30 years before retiring. Estimated net worth is substantial, north of $60 million. Daughter is Simone Washington Taylor, a corporate attorney in Seattle. No criminal record, no history of activist investing or corporate raiding. So why is she coming after us? Fleming asked, more to himself than the room. Harold Montgomery, the airline's chief counsel, cleared his throat. There appears to have been an incident on Flight 2463 from Atlanta to Seattle 2 months ago. Dr. Washington was removed from her first-class seat despite having a valid ticket. Fleming froze. And we're just hearing about this now? The initial complaint was handled as a routine customer service matter, Harold explained uncomfortably. A voucher for future travel was issued. Standard procedure. Standard procedure, Fleming repeated incredulously. And now she owns 12% of our company. Does that still seem standard to you, Harold? Before the lawyer could respond, Fleming's assistant entered the room. Sir, I have Jordan Chen from Pacific Northwest Capital on line 1. He says he represents Dr. Washington and wishes to discuss her investment in Sky America. Fleming straightened his tie. Put him through to the conference line. He gestured for the executives to remain silent as he activated the speakerphone. This is Richard Fleming, Mr. Fleming, thank you for taking my call. Jordan's voice came through clearly. I'm reaching out on behalf of Dr. Eleanor Washington regarding her investment in Sky America Airlines. Yes, we've noticed her rather sudden interest in our company, Fleming replied, striving for a casual tone. We're always pleased to welcome new investors, though typically they introduce themselves before acquiring such a significant stake. Dr. Washington prefers to let her investment speak for itself, Jordan responded smoothly. She sees tremendous untapped potential in Sky America, particularly in the areas of customer experience and corporate culture. I'd be happy to meet with Dr. Washington to discuss her vision for the company, Fleming offered, signaling to Harold to take notes. Perhaps she could visit our headquarters next week. Dr. Washington would prefer a more neutral setting, Jordan countered. She's also interested in meeting with board members, not just management. Fleming's jaw tightened. That's highly unusual. Our board typically interacts with management, not individual shareholders. Shareholders who own 12% of, the company often receive special considerations, Jordan noted. Dr. Washington has already scheduled individual meetings with 3 of your board members next week in New York. Fleming felt his control of the situation slipping. I see. Well, please convey to Dr. Washington that I look forward to understanding her concerns and suggestions. Certainly. One last thing, Jordan added. Dr. Washington has retained Blackwell and Schmidt to review certain customer service practices at Sky America, particularly regarding the treatment of minority and elderly passengers. They may be reaching out to your legal team shortly. After the call ended, Fleming slammed his hand on the conference table. She's declaring war. Get me everything on this woman. I want to know what she's after, what her weaknesses are, and how we stop her. Harold looked uncomfortable. Richard, if this is about discrimination, we need to tread carefully. If there are legitimate issues, this is about control, Fleming interrupted. She's using this alleged incident as leverage for a corporate raid. We need to implement defensive measures immediately. While Fleming rallied his defenses in Dallas, Eleanor was facing challenges of her own. That evening, as she prepared for dinner with Simone's family, her phone rang with an unlisted number. Dr. Washington, said an unfamiliar male voice when she answered. This conversation isn't happening. Eleanor frowned. Who is this? Someone who thinks you should reconsider your interest in Sky America, the voice continued, for your own well-being. A chill ran through Eleanor. Are you threatening me? Just offering friendly advice. Elderly women should enjoy their retirement, not get involved in complicated business matters. You never know what might happen. The call disconnected. Eleanor stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, when Simone entered the kitchen. Mom, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Eleanor hesitated, then shared the content of the call. Simone immediately called Jordan, who dispatched a security consultant to the house within the hour. Unfortunately, this isn't entirely unexpected, the consultant, a former FBI agent named Ramirez, explained as he installed monitoring devices on Eleanor's phone. When large financial interests are threatened, intimidation tactics often follow. Should we contact the police? Simone asked. Ramirez shook his head. The call was too vague to constitute an actionable threat, and it was almost certainly made using a burner phone. But we'll document everything, upgrade your home security system, and keep a close eye on unusual activities. That night, Eleanor was awakened by the sound of breaking glass downstairs. She reached for her phone to call 911, but within seconds, the security system Ramirez had installed began blaring, and lights flooded the yard. Through her window, Eleanor caught a glimpse of a figure in dark clothing running from the property. The police arrived within minutes, followed shortly by Ramirez. They discovered a brick had been thrown through the kitchen window, with a note attached reading simply, "Back off." "This changes things," Ramirez said grimly, photographing the evidence. "This is a clear criminal act. We'll need to implement additional security measures immediately." By morning, Eleanor's story had reached the financial press. Headlines speculated about her intentions toward Sky America, with analysts debating whether she was planning a hostile takeover or activist campaign. The airline's stock price fluctuated wildly as investors reacted to the uncertainty. Jordan, called an emergency strategy meeting at his office, which now featured enhanced security measures of its own. Sky America is fighting back harder than anticipated, he reported. They've implemented a poison pill provision to prevent any shareholder from acquiring more than 15% without board approval. Can they do that? Marcus asked, having insisted on attending despite his mother's concerns about his safety. It's legal, though not always viewed favorably by the market, Jordan explained. It essentially dilutes the ownership stake of any investor who crosses the threshold. So we're capped at our current 12%? Eleanor asked. For now, Jordan confirmed. But that doesn't mean we can't exert influence. We're already the second largest shareholder. Aisha Johnson arrived late to the meeting, her expression grim. Sky America is attempting damage control, she reported. They've just announced a new customer commitment initiative and diversity training program for all customer-facing staff. A superficial response, Eleanor observed. Exactly, Aisha agreed. And there's more. My sources inside the company tell me that Brenda Mitchell, the flight attendant who removed you from your seat, has been promoted to manager of flight attendant training. Eleanor felt a surge of indignation. They're rewarding her behavior? It appears to be a deliberate message, Aisha replied. They're closing ranks. As the days passed, pressure mounted from multiple directions. Financial analysts began speculating openly about Eleanor's intentions, with some suggesting she was simply seeking revenge for a personal slight rather than pursuing legitimate business interests. Dr. Washington's emotional response to a routine customer service issue raises questions about her fitness as a major investor, wrote one prominent analyst in a widely circulated report. More concerning was Eleanor's health. The stress of the situation, combined with the security concerns and public scrutiny, began to take a physical toll. She experienced frequent headaches and increasing fatigue, concerning both Simone and Michael. Your blood pressure is elevated again, Michael noted after checking her vitals one evening. I'm worried about the strain this is putting on your cardiovascular system. I can't back down now, Eleanor insisted. Too many people are counting on this making a difference. No one is counting on you sacrificing your health, Simone countered. We need to consider pacing this differently. Jordan, too, expressed concerns during their next strategy session. The opposition is more determined than we anticipated, he admitted. Fleming has secured the support of several key board members. Our path to influence is narrowing. Eleanor studied the situation analysis on the conference room screen, her academic mind methodically evaluating options. What about other shareholders? Are there potential allies? Possibly, Jordan replied. Several institutional investors have expressed concerns about Sky America's governance and customer service issues. They might be persuaded to support alternative board candidates or policy changes. As they discussed potential approaches, Eleanor's phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her breath catch. Sky America identifies mystery investor as elderly professor removed from first class. The article included details about the flight incident and quoted anonymous sources within the company, characterizing Eleanor as an angry customer seeking revenge rather than a serious investor. They're trying to discredit you, Aisha observed, reading over Eleanor's shoulder. Make this about emotion rather than legitimate business and ethical concerns. Eleanor set down her phone, her expression resolute despite the fatigue evident in her eyes. Then we need to decide whether to keep this private or take our case public. That decision was forced the following day when Fleming appeared on CNBC's Closing Bell, ostensibly to discuss Sky America's quarterly results. When asked about the mystery investor, he smiled condescendingly. Look, we respect Dr. Washington's right to invest in our company, he said smoothly. But it's important to understand the context. This appears to be an emotional response to a routine seating confusion, not a thoughtful investment thesis. At Sky America, we're focused on creating value for all shareholders, not addressing individual grievances. Eleanor watched the interview from Simone's living room, her hands clenched into fists. He's dismissing systematic discrimination as a routine seating confusion, she said, her voice tight with anger. This might actually work in our favor, Aisha suggested. He's publicly downplaying a serious issue that affects many passengers. It makes him look out of touch. Jordan agreed. The question is whether you're ready to tell your story publicly, Eleanor. Once we cross that line, there's no going back. Eleanor thought of the humiliation she'd felt being marched to the back of the plane, the discomfort of the cramped economy seat that had exacerbated her arthritis, the smug satisfaction on Brenda Mitchell's face. She thought of the other passengers, who had faced similar treatment without her resources to fight back. Schedule an interview, she decided. It's time people heard the truth. The luxurious Four Seasons hotel suite in Seattle had been transformed into an impromptu television studio. Lighting technicians adjusted their equipment, while a makeup artist made final touches to Eleanor's appearance. Across from her, veteran, CNN business correspondent Amara Rodriguez reviewed her notes. "We're live in 3 minutes," the producer announced. Eleanor smoothed her navy blue dress, the same one she had worn the day of her ill-fated flight. Jordan, Simone, and Aisha watched from behind the cameras, offering supportive smiles. "Just remember to stay calm and focused," Jordan had advised. During their preparation, "Fleming wants to paint you as emotional and vindictive. Your composure is your strongest counter." "And 90 seconds, the producer called. Amara leaned forward. "Dr. Washington, are you comfortable? Any questions before we go live?" "I'm ready," Eleanor said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She had faced down hostile academic committees and civil rights opponents. She could handle this interview. "And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The producer finished the countdown with silent finger gestures. "Good evening. I'm Amara Rodriguez, and tonight we have an exclusive interview with Dr. Eleanor Washington, the mystery investor who has acquired a significant stake in Sky America Airlines. Dr. Washington, thank you for joining us." "Thank you for having me, Amara. Let's get right to it. You've acquired 12% of Sky America Airlines in just 2 months. What prompted this sudden interest in the airline industry?" Eleanor maintained direct eye contact with the camera. "My investment is based on 2 factors: identifying an undervalued company with potential for improvement, and recognizing that my personal experience revealed systematic problems affecting that value." "You're referring to an incident on a Sky America flight earlier this year?" "Yes. I purchased a first-class ticket from Atlanta to Seattle, and despite having proper documentation and boarding passes, I was removed from my seat and forced to sit in economy class. Sky America has characterized this as a routine seating confusion. Is that accurate?" Eleanor's expression remained composed, but her voice carried quiet authority. "There was no confusion. I had my boarding pass and receipt. The confusion, as they call it, arose solely from the flight attendant's disbelief that a 72-year-old black woman belonged in first class." Amara leaned forward. "That's a serious allegation. Are you saying this was racial discrimination?" "I'm saying that when a paying customer with proper documentation is removed from their rightful seat based on assumptions about who belongs in premium cabins, we need to examine the biases behind those assumptions." The interview continued for 30 minutes, with Eleanor methodically explaining how her experience had led her to investigate Sky America's practices, uncovering patterns that suggested her treatment wasn't an isolated incident. "Our research indicates numerous similar complaints that were systematically minimized or dismissed," she explained. "This isn't just an ethical issue. It's a business problem. Alienating customers and creating hostile environments ultimately destroys shareholder value." "What is your goal as a major investor in Sky America?" Amara asked, as the interview neared its conclusion. "Transformation," Eleanor replied simply. "I want Sky America to become a model of inclusive excellence, where every passenger is treated with dignity, regardless of their age, race, or appearance. That transformation will ultimately benefit all stakeholders, passengers, employees, and investors alike." As the cameras stopped rolling, Amara shook Eleanor's hand. "That was powerful, Dr. Washington. I suspect your phone will be ringing off the hook after this airs." Eleanor's interview aired in prime time and immediately went viral. Clips spread across social media platforms, with the hashtag #GatchIsStandWithEleanor trending nationwide by morning. Former Sky America passengers began sharing their own stories of discrimination using the hashtag, creating a virtual avalanche of negative publicity for the airline. The response is overwhelming, Aisha reported during their morning strategy call. We've received over 3,000 messages from people who experienced similar treatment, including several former Sky America employees willing to go on record about discriminatory practices they witnessed or were instructed to implement. Sky America's stock dropped 7% in the first hour of trading following the interview. By midday, the company issued a terse statement. Sky America Airlines is committed to treating all passengers with respect and dignity. We take Dr. Washington's concerns seriously and are conducting a thorough review of the incident and our customer service practices. We regret any negative experience she may have had and remain committed to providing excellent service to all our customers. A non-apology apology, Simone observed when the statement was released. They're still not acknowledging what actually happened. The public reaction continued to build. Civil rights organizations issued statements of support for Eleanor's campaign. Customers posted videos of themselves cutting up Sky America frequent flyer cards. Institutional investors began publicly questioning the company's leadership and governance. 3 major pension funds have contacted us expressing interest in supporting board changes, Jordan reported. They were already concerned about Fleming's leadership before this controversy. Not all reactions were positive, however. Eleanor began receiving hate mail and death threats from white supremacist groups who objected to a black woman challenging corporate power. Security around Simone's home had to be increased further when suspicious packages arrived containing threatening messages. We need to move you to a more secure location, Ramirez advised after a particularly concerning threat was posted on a far-right message board. Your current address is too exposed. Eleanor reluctantly agreed to relocate, temporarily to a secured apartment building downtown, where Marcus and Zora could still visit her regularly. The move was completed just in time. The following day, a reporter from a tabloid news site was caught attempting to access Simone's property. Meanwhile, Sky America launched a counteroffensive. CEO Fleming appeared on multiple business news programs, portraying Eleanor as an emotional investor pursuing a personal vendetta rather than legitimate business interests. While we respect Dr. Washington's right to invest in our company, we're concerned about her apparent motivation, he told Fox Business. Transforming a major airline requires industry expertise and operational understanding, not academic theories or personal grievances. More disturbing was an attempt to discredit Eleanor directly. A conservative blog published an article questioning her investment credentials and suggesting her late husband's fortune had been built through questionable patent practices. Though easily disproven, the allegations required Eleanor's team to divert resources to reputation management. They're getting desperate, Aisha noted, but we need to stay vigilant. Fleming has connections throughout the industry, and he's clearly willing to fight dirty. The prediction proved accurate when Brenda Mitchell, the flight attendant who had removed Eleanor from her first-class seat, gave an exclusive interview to a sympathetic journalist. Dr. Washington misinterpreted a routine procedure, Mitchell claimed, her voice dripping with feigned sincerity. We had conflicting information in our passenger manifest, and I was simply trying to resolve the situation. It had nothing to do with her race or age. When the interviewer asked why Mitchell had been promoted after the incident, she smiled. My promotion was already in process months before this happened. Sky America recognizes talent and dedication. Eleanor watched the interview with Simone and Marcus, her expression inscrutable. She's lying, Marcus said indignantly. How can she just lie like that on TV? Because she thinks no one can prove otherwise, Eleanor replied quietly. But she's wrong. The next day, Aisha's team located 3 other elderly black passengers who had experienced almost identical treatment on flights where Brenda Mitchell had been the lead flight attendant. All 3 agreed to be interviewed by Amara Rodriguez in a follow-up segment that directly contradicted Mitchell's claims. As public pressure mounted, cracks began to appear in Sky America's defenses. A board member privately contacted Jordan, expressing concerns about Fleming's handling of the situation and openness to discussing governance changes. 2 institutional investors publicly called for an independent investigation into the company's customer service practices and corporate culture. The most significant breakthrough came unexpectedly. An anonymous email arrived in Aisha's inbox, containing internal communications between Sky America executives discussing passenger profiling practices that appeared to target minority and elderly travelers for additional scrutiny or service limitations. "This is explosive," Aisha said after verifying the document's authenticity. "It directly contradicts Fleming's public statements and potentially violates multiple anti-discrimination laws." The source of the leak remained unknown, but Eleanor suspected there were employees within Sky America who recognized the problems in the corporate culture and wanted change. The stress of the public battle took its toll on Eleanor's health. After a particularly intense strategy session, she experienced chest pains and dizziness, prompting Michael to insist on immediate medical attention. "Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated," he informed her after conducting an examination. "You need to reduce your stress levels immediately." "I can't stop now," Eleanor protested. "We're making progress." "You can't lead a corporate transformation from a hospital bed," Michael countered firmly. "Either you scale back your direct involvement, or I'll admit you for observation." Simone sided with her husband. "Mom, we can handle more of the day-to-day operations. Your vision and decision-making are what matter most, not your presence at every meeting." Reluctantly, Eleanor agreed to a modified schedule and increased delegation. Jordan would handle most direct negotiations with Sky America representatives, with Eleanor joining only for critical discussions. Aisha would lead the legal and investigative efforts, keeping Eleanor informed, but not requiring her constant input. The reduced schedule helped stabilize Eleanor's health, but her mind remained focused on the battle ahead. She used her recovery time to develop a comprehensive vision for what Sky America could become, a truly inclusive airline that set industry standards for customer dignity and employee empowerment. Meanwhile, Fleming made one last attempt to contain the situation. He called Eleanor directly, bypassing Jordan and the rest of her team. "Dr. Washington," he began when she answered, his tone conciliatory. "I think it's time we spoke directly. One professional to another. I'm listening, Mr. Fleming. I want to offer you a personal apology for your experience on our airline. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility as CEO." Eleanor remained silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "In addition to my apology, I'm prepared to offer a generous settlement, a lifetime of first-class travel with Sky America, and a public commitment to improving our training and customer service practices." "In exchange for what?" Eleanor asked, already knowing the answer. "In exchange for selling your shares back to the company at a 10% premium and signing a non-disclosure agreement about the incident." Eleanor thought about how easily this might have ended if Fleming had simply acknowledged the discrimination when she first complained, if the airline had shown any genuine remorse or commitment to change. "Mr. Fleming, I don't want your apology. I don't want your money, and I certainly don't want to fly on your airline as it currently operates." She paused, letting her words sink in. "What I want is transformation. What I want is your job." The stunned silence on the other end of the line told Eleanor everything she needed to know about Fleming's understanding of her determination. "The shareholders' meeting is in 3 weeks, she continued calmly. "I suggest you update your resume." The gleaming skyscraper in downtown Chicago that housed Sky America's corporate headquarters seemed to pierce the morning clouds like a silver needle. Inside the executive boardroom on the 47th floor, Richard Fleming paced nervously before a hastily assembled emergency board meeting. "A poison pill is our best defense," he insisted, gesturing toward the PowerPoint presentation displayed on the massive screen. "It will prevent Washington from acquiring additional shares and dilute her current position if she tries." Harold Montgomery, the chief legal counsel, adjusted his glasses nervously. "While legally permissible, poison pills aren't viewed favorably by institutional investors these days. It could be seen as entrenchment." "I don't give a damn how it's viewed," Fleming snapped. "This woman is trying to take over our company because of a seeding misunderstanding. Are we really going to let that happen?" Patricia Winters, one of the longer-serving board members, cleared her throat. "Richard, I'm not sure characterizing this as a misunderstanding is accurate anymore. The evidence Dr. Washington's team has presented suggests a pattern of problematic practices. Not you too, Patricia, Fleming groaned. Look, every airline has customer service complaints. It's the nature of the business. Washington is weaponizing a single incident to advance her agenda. An agenda that includes improving customer service and addressing discrimination, noted James Liu, the newest board member. Are those goals we oppose? Fleming slammed his hand on the conference table. Of course we don't oppose them, but we're already addressing these issues internally. We don't need an outside academic with no industry experience dictating how we run our airline. After heated debate, the board narrowly approved the poison pill provision, officially termed a shareholder rights plan. The news was publicly announced that afternoon, causing another dip in Sky America's already battered stock price. Jordan Chen received the news while meeting with Eleanor and her core team in the secure downtown apartment that now served as their headquarters. They've implemented the poison pill, he reported, reviewing the announcement on his tablet. It prevents any shareholder from acquiring more than 15% without board approval. As expected, Eleanor nodded calmly. Their predictability is becoming an asset to us. We should challenge it legally, Aisha suggested. Courts have increasingly scrutinized poison pills, especially when implemented primarily to protect management rather than shareholders. Agreed, Jordan said. But we should also continue building our coalition among other shareholders. The poison pill doesn't prevent us from influencing the board through a proxy fight. While they discussed strategy, Marcus burst into the room, his teenage face flushed with excitement. You need to see this, he said, holding up his phone. Someone inside Sky America just leaked internal emails about how they handled discrimination complaints. The team gathered around as Marcus displayed the anonymous email he'd received through the tip line they'd established. Attached were dozens of internal communications showing how Sky America's customer service representatives were trained to offer minimal compensation to elderly and minority passengers who filed complaints, while providing more generous settlements to others. This is exactly what we needed, Aisha said, immediately forwarding the documents to her legal team for verification. If these are authentic, they prove systematic discrimination, not isolated incidents. The question is who sent them? Simone wondered. Someone inside Sky America is clearly unhappy with how things are being handled. Within hours, Aisha's team confirmed the document's authenticity. They immediately filed a legal challenge against Sky America's poison pill, citing the new evidence as proof that management was attempting to entrench itself despite failing to address serious corporate culture issues. Fleming responded by giving an emergency interview to CNBC, where he denounced the leaked documents as taken out of context and accused Eleanor's team of corporate espionage. When pressed about the specific guidance for handling complaints, differently based on passenger demographics, he became visibly uncomfortable. Our customer service representatives use their judgment in each unique situation, he stammered. There's no systematic discrimination at Sky America. The unconvincing performance further damaged the company's credibility. 3 major institutional investors publicly expressed concerns about Fleming's leadership, with one calling for an independent investigation into the company's practices. Eleanor watched these developments with mixed emotions. While pleased with their progress, she was troubled by the increasing strain on her health. The chest pains had returned, accompanied by occasional shortness of breath that Michael warned could signal serious cardiovascular issues. You need to pace yourself, he advised during a checkup in her secure apartment. Your blood pressure is still elevated and I'm concerned about these chest pains. I can't step back now, Eleanor insisted. We're at a critical juncture. The situation intensified when Brenda Mitchell, the flight attendant who had removed Eleanor from her first-class seat, gave another interview attacking Eleanor's character. Dr. Washington is using her wealth and privilege to punish an entire company because she couldn't accept a simple mistake, Mitchell claimed. Thousands of jobs are at risk because of her vendetta. The interview backfired spectacularly when Aisha's team located 3 other elderly black passengers who had experienced almost identical treatment on Mitchell's flights. All 3 agreed to be interviewed by CNN, creating a devastating counter-narrative to Mitchell's claims. As public pressure mounted, A significant break came from an unexpected quarter. Tyler Rhodes, the head flight attendant who had participated in removing Eleanor from her seat, contacted Aisha through the whistleblower hotline. "I can't sleep at night anymore," he confessed during their confidential meeting. "What we did to Dr. Washington was wrong, and it wasn't an isolated incident. We were trained to maintain the premium cabin experience by ensuring certain types of passengers were verified more rigorously than others." Rhodes provided documentation showing that Brenda Mitchell had received commendations for her cabin management techniques, which included ensuring appropriate passengers were seated in premium cabins. "This could be our smoking gun," Aisha told Eleanor after the meeting. Rhodes is willing to testify about the systematic nature of these practices. The whistleblower's evidence strengthened their legal challenge against the poison pill. A federal judge issued a preliminary injunction preventing its implementation, citing serious questions about whether the provision serves legitimate corporate purposes rather than entrenching management engaged in potentially discriminatory practices. The ruling was a major victory, allowing Eleanor's team to continue acquiring shares up to the 15% threshold. Major institutional investors began contacting Jordan directly, expressing interest in supporting Eleanor's efforts to reform Sky America's governance and practices. "Vanguard and BlackRock are on the fence," Jordan reported during their daily strategy meeting. "If we can get either of them to back us publicly, it could tip the balance in our favor." What's your take on this high-stakes corporate battle? Comment number 1 if you believe Eleanor's health concerns should make her reconsider her approach, or comment number 2 if you think she should push forward despite the personal cost. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow this incredible journey of justice and transformation. The question remains, can one determined woman change an entire industry's approach to discrimination? Let's continue with Eleanor's fight against corporate injustice. The momentum shifted further when Fleming made a critical error. In an attempt to reassure investors, he called Eleanor directly, bypassing her professional team. "Dr. Washington," he began, his tone artificially pleasant, "I think we've let this situation escalate unnecessarily. I'm prepared to offer you a seat on our board and a significant role in developing our new customer service policies." "In exchange for what?" Eleanor asked warily. "In exchange for ending your acquisition efforts and publicly expressing confidence in current management," Fleming replied. "We could announce it as a collaborative effort to improve Sky America's customer experience." Eleanor paused, considering the offer. A board seat would give her influence, but would it be enough to create real change? What about the discriminatory practices we've documented? What about accountability for those involved? Fleming's tone cooled noticeably. "We're prepared to review all practices and make necessary adjustments. As for individual employees, we don't publicly discipline our staff based on passenger complaints. Even when those complaints reveal systematic discrimination?" "Dr. Washington," Fleming said, his patience clearly wearing thin, "I'm offering you a significant opportunity to influence our company from within. Most activist investors would jump at this chance." "I'm not most investors," Eleanor replied calmly. "And I'm not interested in window dressing. Sky America needs fundamental transformation, beginning with leadership." "So that's what this is really about." Fleming's voice hardened. "You want my job." "I want accountability," Eleanor corrected him. "If that includes leadership changes, so be it." Fleming's response was chilling. "You should know that I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've survived economic downturns, terrorist attacks, and pandemics. I won't be pushed out by someone who doesn't know the difference between a regional jet and a wide body." "I know the difference between dignity and discrimination," Eleanor replied evenly. "And that's what this is really about." After hanging up, Eleanor immediately shared the conversation with her team. Jordan was particularly concerned about Fleming's threatening tone. "He's cornered and dangerous," Jordan warned. "We need to prepare for more aggressive countermeasures." The prediction proved accurate. The following day, financial blogs began, publishing stories questioning Eleanor's investment history and decision-making capacity. One particularly vicious piece suggested her actions were symptomatic of elderly cognitive decline rather than rational investment strategy. "They're attacking your competence now," Simone observed angrily. "It's ageism on top of everything else." Eleanor remained unruffled. "It's a sign of desperation. They've run out of substantive arguments." More concerning was the discovery that someone had attempted to access Eleanor's investment records through unauthorized means. The cybersecurity team Jordan had engaged detected and blocked the intrusion, but the sophistication of the attempt suggested professional hackers. "We can't prove Sky America's involvement," the security consultant reported, "but the timing is highly suspicious." As these corporate warfare tactics escalated, Eleanor suffered another health setback. After a particularly stressful video conference with potential ally shareholders, she experienced severe chest pains and dizziness, prompting Simone to call for emergency medical assistance. "This isn't just stress anymore," Michael informed them gravely after examining Eleanor. "Your mother's showing signs of cardiovascular strain that could lead to a serious cardiac event if not addressed." "I can't stop now," Eleanor protested weakly from the couch where she'd been instructed to rest. "We're too close." Simone took her mother's hand. "Mom, no corporate battle is worth your life. We can find another way to fight this." "Your daughter's..." "Right," Jordan agreed, having rushed over when he heard about Eleanor's condition. "We can pursue this more gradually, or even consider Fleming's offer of a board seat as a starting point." Eleanor closed her eyes, considering their concerns. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for her decision. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "My entire life, I've seen people forced to accept less than they deserve because fighting seemed too hard, too dangerous, or too costly. I watched my parents swallow their dignity countless times. I've seen students and colleagues compromise their dreams because systems were stacked against them." She opened her eyes, looking at each worried face around her. "This isn't just about a first-class seat or even about Sky America. It's about standing up and saying enough." She struggled to a sitting position, waving away Simone's concerned. "I'm not sacrificing my health carelessly. I'm making a calculated decision about what matters most to me. And right now, that's seeing this through." After a tense family discussion, they reached a compromise. Eleanor would remain the strategic decision-maker, but would drastically reduce her direct involvement in daily operations. She would follow a strict health regimen under Michael's supervision and would withdraw completely if her condition worsened significantly. With this arrangement in place, the campaign continued. Their legal challenge against Sky America's poison pill succeeded, with the court permanently blocking its implementation. This victory allowed Eleanor's investment team to continue acquiring shares, bringing her ownership stake to just under 15%. The proxy battle lines were now clearly drawn. The upcoming shareholder meeting would include votes on board composition that could potentially shift control away from Fleming's allies. Both sides intensified their outreach to institutional investors and other large shareholders who would determine the outcome. In a desperate move, Fleming called an emergency board meeting to propose a strategic restructuring that would essentially dismember the company by selling off its most valuable routes and assets to friendly competitors, making it a less attractive acquisition target. This proposal backfired spectacularly when news of it leaked to financial press. Sky America's stock plummeted, and several previously neutral board members contacted Jordan privately to express concerns about Fleming's judgment. "He's willing to destroy the company rather than address its problems," one board member confided. "Several of us are reconsidering our positions." As the shareholder meeting approached, Eleanor's team continued building their case. They prepared detailed presentations showing how addressing discrimination and improving customer experience would enhance shareholder value, not diminish it. They developed a comprehensive transition plan that would maintain operational stability while implementing necessary cultural changes. The night before the crucial meeting, Eleanor sat with her family in the secure apartment, reviewing their strategy one final time. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she told them, "I want you to know how grateful I am for your support. This wouldn't have been possible without each of you." Marcus, who had grown increasingly confident throughout the campaign, nodded seriously. We're going to win, Grandma. Fleming doesn't stand a chance. Eleanor smiled at her grandson's certainty. Win or lose, we've already changed the conversation. Sometimes that's how progress begins. A story of justice, perseverance, and the power of refusing to accept racism as inevitable. The morning of the Sky America shareholder meeting dawned crisp and clear in Chicago. From the window of her hotel suite, Eleanor could see Lake Michigan stretching like a vast blue plain toward the horizon, early sunlight dancing on its surface. The peaceful scene belied the corporate battle about to unfold. "Are you sure you're up to this?" Simone asked, watching with concern as Eleanor took her blood pressure medication with shaking hands. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," Eleanor replied, though the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. The past week had been particularly difficult, with her blood pressure fluctuating dangerously despite medication adjustments. Michael, who had insisted on accompanying them to Chicago to monitor Eleanor's health, frowned as he checked her vitals. "Your pressure is still elevated, and your pulse is rapid. Medically speaking, you should be resting, not attending a high-stress corporate showdown." "I didn't come this far to watch from the sidelines," Eleanor said firmly, standing to demonstrate her resolve. A wave of dizziness caused her to grasp the back of a chair momentarily, but she straightened with determination. "I'll rest after we're done." Jordan arrived an hour before they needed to leave, bringing the latest intelligence. Fleming has been calling shareholders all night, making last-minute promises and threats. He's desperate, which means he's dangerous. "Any surprises we should prepare for?" Eleanor asked, reviewing their presentation materials one last time. "We've heard rumors of a nuclear option, some kind of corporate restructuring proposal that would make your acquisition efforts moot. But nothing concrete. Our legal team is prepared for any maneuvers they might attempt." At precisely 9:30, Eleanor's team departed for Sky America headquarters in a convoy of 3 black SUVs, a security precaution Ramirez had insisted upon after receiving credible threats. Eleanor traveled in the middle vehicle with Simone, Michael, and Jordan, while legal and financial team members occupied the others. They arrived at the gleaming skyscraper to find a small crowd of protesters on the sidewalk, some supporting Sky America management, others carrying signs reading, "I stand with Eleanor," and "Dignity over discrimination." News vans lined the street, reporters doing live stand-ups with the building's facade as backdrop. "Quite the circus," Simone observed as they pulled into the underground parking garage, bypassing the media gauntlet. Security was tight inside the building. Eleanor's team was stopped multiple times for credential verification before being escorted to a holding area 1 floor below the main meeting room. The message was clear: they were not welcome guests. Dr. Washington, a stern-faced corporate secretary, greeted them. "The meeting begins in 30 minutes. Your team may enter now to set up any presentation materials, but shareholders with voting rights won't be admitted until 10 o'clock precisely." "I am a shareholder with voting rights," Eleanor pointed out calmly. "In fact, I'm your second largest shareholder." The secretary flushed slightly. "Of course, I meant other shareholders." "We understand," Jordan intervened smoothly. "We'll prepare our materials now." As they set up in the massive auditorium already filling with company executives and board members, Eleanor noticed Fleming huddled with his inner circle on the far side of the room. He glanced up, catching her eye momentarily before turning away with visible disdain. "He still doesn't take me seriously," Eleanor murmured to Jordan. "Even now." "His mistake," Jordan replied. "One of many." At 10 o'clock, the doors opened to admit voting shareholders. The room quickly filled with institutional investor representatives, individual shareholders, and financial press who had secured the required credentials. Eleanor recognized several major fund managers with whom Jordan had been negotiating support. As the meeting was called to order, Eleanor took her designated seat in the front row. Fleming took the podium, looking immaculate in a tailored suit despite reports of his sleepless night. "Welcome to Sky America Airlines annual shareholder meeting," he began with practiced cordiality. "Before we proceed with the formal agenda, I want to address the elephant in the room." He turned slightly to face Eleanor directly. "In recent months, our company has faced unprecedented challenges, not from market conditions or industry competition, but from an activist campaign based on a single customer service incident. While we regret any negative experiences our passengers may have, we reject the characterization of Sky America as a company that discriminates or treats any customer with less than full respect. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Fleming continued, his tone hardening. The board and management team have determined that the changes proposed by Dr. Washington and her team would damage shareholder value by diverting resources from our strategic growth initiatives into unnecessary programs driven by a personal agenda. Eleanor remained expressionless, though her heart rate accelerated at the mischaracterization of their carefully researched proposals. However, Fleming continued with a thin smile, in the interest of corporate stability and shareholder harmony, I am announcing today that I have reached an agreement with Transcontinental Airlines for a merger of equals that will create the nation's second-largest carrier and provide immediate premium value to all Sky America shareholders. Gasps and exclamations filled the room. This was the nuclear option Jordan had heard rumors about, a hastily arranged merger designed specifically to thwart Eleanor's campaign. Board Chairman Walter Davis quickly took the podium. This merger proposal has received preliminary board approval and would provide shareholders with a 22% premium over current market value. We will be distributing detailed information packets and calling a special meeting for a formal vote within 30 days. Jordan leaned close to Eleanor. This is a desperation move. The merger hasn't been vetted properly, and it would likely face significant regulatory hurdles. Can they do this? Eleanor whispered back. Just announce a merger without warning? They can announce it, but they can't complete it without shareholder approval. It's a delay tactic designed to derail our momentum. The chairman continued. Given this significant development, we suggest modifying today's agenda to focus on this exciting opportunity rather than the divisive proposals that were previously submitted. Eleanor felt a surge of indignation. After months of work and personal sacrifice, Fleming was attempting to sideline their entire campaign with a hastily concocted merger. She signaled to Aisha, who immediately approached the procedural microphone. Point of order, Aisha stated firmly. The announced merger proposal is not on today's formal agenda and has not been properly noticed to shareholders. The bylaws clearly state that properly submitted shareholder proposals must be considered at the annual meeting regardless of new business. The corporate secretary conferred hurriedly with the chairman, who looked displeased but nodded reluctantly. The point is well taken. We will proceed with the agenda as noticed, including the proposals submitted by Washington Investments, LLC. However, we ask shareholders to consider today's merger announcement when evaluating these proposals. As he see, the meeting proceeded through routine matters. Eleanor reviewed her presentation notes one final time. Her vision blurred slightly, a symptom Michael had warned might indicate dangerous blood pressure elevation, but she blinked it away, refusing to show weakness. Finally, the chairman announced, "We now move to Proposal 5, submitted by Washington Investments, LLC, regarding board composition and corporate governance changes. Dr. Eleanor Washington has requested time to address this proposal." Eleanor rose slowly, gathering her strength. Simone squeezed her hand supportively as she made her way to the podium. The room fell silent as she adjusted the microphone. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," she began, her voice clear and steady despite her physical discomfort. "Fellow shareholders, I come before you not merely as an investor seeking financial returns, but as someone who believes that how a company achieves those returns matters deeply." She paused, scanning the room. 3 months ago, I boarded a Sky America flight with a first-class ticket I had purchased with my own money. Despite having proper documentation, I was removed from my seat and forced to sit in economy because I didn't fit someone's image of a first-class passenger. Fleming shifted uncomfortably in his chair as Eleanor continued. "When I researched this incident, I discovered it wasn't isolated. It reflected a pattern of practices that systematically diminish the dignity of certain passengers based on their age, race, or appearance." Eleanor turned to the financial data displayed on the screen behind her. "This isn't just an ethical issue. It's a business problem. Companies that discriminate inevitably damage their brand, alienate customers, demoralize employees, and destroy shareholder value. For the next 15 minutes, Eleanor methodically presented evidence of Sky America's problematic practices and their financial impact, followed by a detailed plan for governance reforms and policy changes that would address these issues while enhancing long-term profitability. The hastily announced merger proposal should tell you everything you need to know about current management's priorities, she concluded. Rather than addressing legitimate concerns about company practices, they're willing to surrender Sky America's independence to avoid accountability. Is that the leadership you want determining the future of your investment? As Eleanor returned to her seat, she noticed something unexpected. Applause had broken out among many of the institutional investor representatives. Fleming's face had darkened with anger. The chairman quickly called for order and invited Fleming to respond. The CEO strode to the podium with barely contained fury. Dr. Washington presents a compelling narrative, he began sarcastically. Unfortunately, it bears little resemblance to reality. The incident she describes was a routine seating confusion that occurred during a particularly busy travel period. It had nothing to do with her race or age. He turned to face Eleanor directly. What we're witnessing is a vindictive campaign by someone with no airline industry experience who is willing to damage thousands of employees' livelihoods and millions of passengers' travel options because of a perceived slight. Eleanor maintained her composure, though she felt her chest tightening uncomfortably. Fleming continued his attack, dismissing their evidence as selective and misleading, and characterizing their reform proposals as costly virtue signaling that would undermine operational efficiency. As he spoke, Eleanor noticed a commotion at the back of the room. A woman in a Sky America flight attendant uniform had entered and was speaking urgently to a security guard, who appeared to be trying to prevent her from proceeding further. With a shock, Eleanor recognized Brenda Mitchell, the very flight attendant who had removed her from her first-class seat. Mitchell broke away from the security guard and marched down the center aisle toward the podium, ignoring attempts to intercept her. Fleming faltered mid-sentence, clearly alarmed by this unexpected interruption. "Mr. Fleming," Mitchell called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You told me to deny everything. You said the company would back me completely if I stuck to the story that it was just a seating confusion." The room erupted in murmurs as security personnel hesitated, unsure whether to forcibly remove a uniformed employee. Fleming's face had gone pale. "Ms. Mitchell, this is neither the time nor place," he began. "It's exactly the time," Mitchell interrupted, her voice shaking. "I've been doing your dirty work for years, removing passengers who didn't fit the first-class image you wanted. I've been following the unwritten policy that everyone knows exists but no one acknowledges." She turned to face Eleanor directly. "Dr. Washington, what I did to you was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it, but I was afraid of losing my job if I didn't follow the unspoken rules." The chairman frantically called for order as security finally moved to escort Mitchell from the room. Before they reached her, another voice spoke up from the side of the auditorium. "She's telling the truth." All heads turned to see Captain Brandon Harris, the pilot who had supported Eleanor's removal from first class, standing near a side entrance. "I've been with Sky America for 22 years, Harris continued, his voice carrying authority even without a microphone. "In the last 5 years under current management, the culture has changed. We were encouraged to maintain the premium cabin experience by ensuring certain types of passengers were scrutinized more carefully than others. It wasn't stated explicitly, but the message was clear." Fleming was now standing, gesturing angrily, for security to remove both Mitchell and Harris, but the damage was done. The unscripted testimonies had electrified the room, giving immediate credibility to Eleanor's claims in a way no prepared presentation could have achieved. The chairman struggled to regain control of the meeting as Mitchell and Harris were escorted out. "We will take a 30-minute recess," he announced over the commotion. "When we return, we will proceed with the scheduled votes." During the break, Eleanor's team huddled in a corner of the auditorium, processing the unexpected developments. "Mitchell and Harris weren't on our witness list," Aisha noted with confusion. "We had no idea they were planning to speak today." "They weren't planning to," came a voice behind them. They turned to find Tyler Rhodes, the head flight attendant who had previously contacted them as a whistleblower. Brenda watched Dr. Washington's CNN interview and has been wrestling with her conscience ever since. When she heard about today's meeting, she decided she couldn't stay silent anymore. "And Captain Harris?" Eleanor asked. "He's been troubled by the incident since it happened," Rhodes explained. When he heard Brenda was going to speak up, he decided to support her. Jordan's phone buzzed continuously with messages from institutional investors seeking emergency consultations during the recess. "The dynamics have completely shifted," he reported after a series of rapid conversations. "Major funds that were on the fence are now leaning toward supporting our proposals." When the meeting reconvened, the tension in the room was palpable. Fleming and his executive team huddled with legal counsel, their expressions grim. Eleanor returned to her seat, feeling simultaneously energized by the unexpected support and physically drained. The tightness in her chest had intensified, and she noticed with alarm that her left arm felt slightly numb, a warning sign Michael had specifically cautioned her about. The chairman called for votes on the shareholder proposals, beginning with routine matters before reaching the critical governance changes Eleanor had proposed. As the voting proceeded, Eleanor could see from the running tallies displayed on the screen that support for their proposals was stronger than even their most optimistic projections. When the final votes were counted, the result was clear. Eleanor's slate of governance reforms had passed by a narrow but decisive margin. 3 of Fleming's strongest board allies would be replaced by independent directors, and a special committee would be established to review the company's customer service practices and corporate culture. Fleming sat stone-faced as the results were announced. The chairman, attempting to put a positive spin on the outcome, characterized it as an opportunity for constructive engagement with diverse shareholder perspectives. Eleanor should have felt triumphant, but the physical symptoms she'd been fighting suddenly intensified. As she stood to acknowledge the voting results, a sharp pain lanced through her chest, radiating down her left arm. The room seemed to tilt and blur around her. "Mom?" Simone's concerned voice seemed to come from very far away. Eleanor tried to respond but couldn't form the words. She was vaguely aware of her knees buckling, of Michael rushing to her side, of someone calling for emergency medical assistance. As consciousness faded, her last thought was that she had won the battle, but might not be present for the transformation she had fought so hard to create. The rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors filled the private room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where Eleanor lay. Her condition stabilized, but serious. Simone sat beside the bed, her face drawn with worry as she held her mother's hand. Michael stood reviewing medical charts with the attending cardiologist while Jordan paced near the window, fielding urgent calls about the aftermath of the shareholder meeting. "The good news is it wasn't a major heart attack," the cardiologist explained to Michael in hushed tones. "But she experienced what we call a stress cardiomyopathy, sometimes known as broken heart syndrome. The extreme stress triggered a condition that mimics a heart attack." "Prognosis?" Michael asked professionally, though his voice carried personal concern. "With proper rest and medication, she should recover fully, but she needs to avoid significant stress for at least several weeks." Simone overheard this exchange and looked up from her mother's bedside. "Several weeks. The corporate transition is happening now. There are 1,000 decisions that need to be made." The cardiologist's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I understand the timing is difficult, but your mother's health must be the priority. Another cardiac event could have much more serious consequences." As they discussed Eleanor's condition, her eyelids fluttered open. She took in her surroundings with momentary confusion before focusing on Simone's worried face. "The vote," Eleanor whispered, her voice raspy. "What happened?" Simone squeezed her hand gently. "We won, Mom. Your proposal's passed. Fleming's allies are being removed from the board." A small smile touched Eleanor's lips before concern clouded her features. "What's wrong with me? Why am I here?" Michael moved to her bedside, explaining her condition in simplified terms. "Your heart reacted to the extreme stress, Mom. You're going to be fine, but you need rest." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this information. When she opened them again, determination had replaced confusion. We can't lose momentum, there's too much at stake. Your health is what's at stake now, Simone insisted. The team can handle the transition. Jordan approached the bed, having finished his latest call. She's right, Eleanor. The most critical votes have already been won. We have capable people who can implement the next steps while you recover. Eleanor considered this, clearly torn, between her physical limitations and her desire to see the transformation through personally. I need to be involved in key decisions, she finally said, even if it's from this hospital bed. After consulting with the medical team, they developed a compromise. Eleanor would remain hospitalized for observation while critical transition work continued. Simone would serve as her proxy for in-person meetings, with Eleanor participating in the most important decisions via secure video conferences limited to 30 minutes daily. Meanwhile, Sky America headquarters had descended into chaos. Fleming had retreated to his office immediately after the shareholder meeting, refusing all calls and delegating emergency response to his executive team. Financial news networks ran continuous coverage of the boardroom coup, with analysts debating the implications for the airline industry and corporate governance more broadly. The hastily announced merger with Transcontinental Airlines was quickly revealed to be more smoke than substance. Transcontinental's CEO issued a statement characterizing the discussions as preliminary explorations, rather than a definitive agreement, distancing his company from Sky America's internal turmoil. 3 days after the shareholder meeting, with Eleanor still hospitalized but stable, Sky America's reconstituted board held its first emergency session. Simone attended as Eleanor's representative, with Jordan and Aisha providing support. Walter Davis, who had retained his position as board chairman by a narrow margin, opened the meeting with visible discomfort. "We face an unprecedented situation requiring immediate action," he began. "Our CEO has effectively gone incommunicado since the shareholder meeting, responding only through his assistant to say he is considering his options." "That's unacceptable," stated Catherine Wong, one of the newly elected independent directors. "The company needs leadership, especially during this transition." After lengthy discussion, the board voted to place Fleming on administrative leave and appoint an interim CEO, while a search committee identified permanent leadership. Jordan had anticipated this development and had prepared a list of potential interim candidates with relevant industry experience who could stabilize the company during the transition. At the top of that list was William Turner, a respected former airline executive with a background in both operations and customer experience. Turner had been one of the few black executives in the airline industry before his retirement 3 years earlier, and his reputation for ethical leadership and operational excellence made him an ideal choice for the challenging role. The board approved Turner's appointment by a comfortable margin. Simone immediately contacted Eleanor via secure video link to share the news. "William Turner," Eleanor repeated thoughtfully from her hospital bed. "I remember reading about him. Didn't he implement that successful customer dignity initiative at Midwest Airways?" "The very same," Jordan confirmed. "He increased both customer satisfaction and profitability by focusing on respectful treatment of all passengers. He's exactly the kind of leader Sky America needs right now." Turner accepted the appointment the following day, immediately scheduling meetings with key stakeholders to understand the company's challenges. His first request was to meet with Eleanor, a discussion the medical team reluctantly approved with strict time limits. "Dr. Washington," Turner greeted her via video conference, his dignified presence evident even through the screen. "I want to thank you for creating this opportunity for meaningful change. Your courage has opened a door that many of us have been trying to push through for years." "The courage was shown by people like Brenda Mitchell and Captain Harris," Eleanor replied. "They risked their careers to speak the truth." "Speaking of Ms. Mitchell," Turner said, "one of my first questions concerns how we handle her situation. She violated company policies by disrupting the shareholder meeting, but she also exposed problematic practices that needed to be addressed." Eleanor considered this carefully. "I believe in accountability, but also in redemption. Ms. Mitchell's actions toward me were wrong, but her choice to speak up showed character growth. Perhaps she could be part of the solution, rather than simply facing punishment." Turner nodded thoughtfully. I'm considering creating a special advisory committee on customer dignity and inclusion. Someone with her perspective, having been part of the problem but choosing to be part of the solution, could provide valuable insights. As Turner began his role, troubling discoveries emerged about Sky America's operations under Fleming's leadership. Financial irregularities suggested resources had been diverted from customer service improvements to executive compensation and questionable consultancy arrangements. Employee surveys revealed widespread dissatisfaction and fear of retaliation for reporting problems. "It's worse than we thought," Jordan reported during one of their daily briefings in Eleanor's hospital room, where she had been moved once her condition stabilized. Fleming ran the airline like a personal fiefdom, rewarding loyalty over competence and silencing dissent. Eleanor absorbed this sobering information. "This reinforces that our campaign wasn't just about one incident. The discrimination I experienced was symptomatic of deeper cultural problems." As Fleming's administrative leave continued, his allies within the executive team began resigning, creating both challenges and opportunities. William Turner used these openings to bring in fresh leadership, prioritizing airline veterans with strong records on employee relations and customer experience. 1 week after the shareholder meeting, Eleanor was discharged from the hospital, with strict instructions to limit stress and activity. Rather than returning to Seattle immediately, she moved into a service department near Sky America headquarters, allowing her to participate more directly in the transition while still resting. There, she faced an important decision: what to do with her significant ownership stake now that the initial governance reforms had been achieved. Jordan presented 3 options: sell the shares for a substantial profit, maintain the investment as a passive shareholder, or continue active involvement in transforming the company. Financially, selling now would lock in an excellent return, Jordan advised. The stock has actually increased since the shareholder meeting, with markets responding positively to the leadership changes. Eleanor gazed out the apartment window, at the Chicago skyline, considering her options. "This was never primarily about financial returns," she said finally. "It was about creating lasting change in how people are treated. Selling now might leave the transformation incomplete." Simone, who had been dividing her time between supporting her mother and checking on her children back in Seattle, raised practical concerns. "Mom, you've already achieved more than anyone thought possible. Your health has to be the priority now." "I know," Eleanor acknowledged, "but there's a middle path. I can remain involved in the strategic direction without managing day-to-day details." After careful consideration, Eleanor decided to maintain her ownership stake and accept a position as special advisor to the board on customer experience and corporate culture. This role would allow her to influence Sky America's transformation without the stress of operational management. Meanwhile, William Turner was making his mark as interim CEO. He established a comprehensive review of all customer service practices, prioritizing the identification and elimination of discriminatory policies. He created open channels for employees to report problems without fear of retaliation and initiated a company-wide training program focused on dignity and respect. "The frontline employees are responding positively," he reported during a strategy meeting in Eleanor's apartment. "Many of them have been uncomfortable with certain practices for years, but felt powerless to change them." The most dramatic moment of this transition period came when Captain Brandon Harris requested a private meeting with Eleanor. Turner arranged for them to meet in a conference room at headquarters, with Simone present to ensure her mother wasn't overtaxed. Harris entered the room with visible apprehension, still in his pilot's uniform. "Dr. Washington," he began, his voice tight with emotion, "I want to apologize personally for my role in what happened to you on that flight. I had the authority to correct the situation, and I failed to do so." Eleanor studied him thoughtfully. "Why did you decide to speak up at the shareholder meeting? You could have remained silent." Harris looked down at his hands. "My father was born in Alabama in 1942. He told me stories about being forced to give up seats, being told he didn't belong in certain spaces. When I realized I had perpetuated that same injustice, I couldn't live with myself." His sincerity was palpable, and Eleanor felt a weight lifting from her heart. "Thank you for your honesty, Captain Harris. What matters now is where we go from here." "I volunteered to lead pilot training on intervention protocols," Harris explained. teaching flight crews how to recognize and address discriminatory situations. If you're willing, your experience could be a powerful teaching example. Eleanor agreed to have her story included in the training materials, recognizing that personal narratives often created more meaningful change than abstract policies. This conversation with Harris represented a healing moment not just for Eleanor, personally, but symbolically for the company's transformation. As weeks passed, the practical aspects of corporate transformation took shape. Turner implemented a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy with clear reporting procedures and accountability measures. The company established a scholarship program for minority students pursuing aviation careers. Customer service metrics began showing improvement as employees embraced the new emphasis on treating all passengers with dignity. For Eleanor, the most meaningful moment came 2 months after the shareholder meeting, when she boarded a Sky America flight from Chicago to Seattle, her first time flying with the airline since the incident that had sparked her campaign. She had purchased a first-class ticket, and as she approached the cabin, she was greeted by a flight attendant whose name tag read, Jennifer. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Washington," Jennifer said warmly, clearly recognizing her. "It's an honor to have you with us today. Your seat is 3A, the same one from your previous flight." As Eleanor settled into the familiar seat, she noticed subtle changes in how the cabin crew operated. More consistent service patterns, more attentive responses to all passengers regardless of appearance or age. Midway through the flight, the lead flight attendant approached with a bottle of champagne and a handwritten note. "This is from our entire crew," she explained. "We want you to know that your courage has made a real difference in how we work." Eleanor blinked back tears as she read the note, signed by every crew member. As the flight continued toward Seattle and home, she gazed out the window at the clouds below, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Not just the physical journey from Atlanta to Seattle and back again, but the journey from humiliation to transformation. 1 year after the fateful shareholder meeting, Eleanor Washington stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Chicago Hilton, addressing hundreds of Sky America employees gathered for a company-wide celebration. At 73, she carried herself with the same dignity and determination that had characterized her throughout her life, though the past year's battles had left visible marks in the additional silver threading through her hair and the slight hesitation in her movements. "When I boarded a Sky America flight 13 months ago," she began, her voice strong despite her physical fragility, "I could never have imagined standing before you today. What began as a personal humiliation has evolved into something far more meaningful, a transformation not just of one airline, but potentially of an industry." The ballroom was decorated with the new corporate branding unveiled just a month earlier. Sky America Airlines had been renamed Liberty Airlines, with a redesigned logo featuring a stylized eagle whose wings formed an inclusive circle. The rebranding symbolized the company's commitment to a fresh start while honoring its American heritage. "Liberty Airlines is more than a name change," Eleanor continued. "It represents a fundamental shift in how this company views its purpose. Yes, we transport people from place to place, but how we do that, the dignity with which we treat every passenger and employee, defines who we are." In the front row, William Turner nodded in agreement. His interim CEO position had become permanent 6 months earlier, when the board unanimously approved his appointment after a nationwide search found no better candidate for leading the company's transformation. Beside him sat Marcus, now 15, wearing a crisp suit and a Liberty Airlines pin on his lapel. Eleanor's grandson had become something of a mascot for the company's youth initiatives, and his analytical contributions had earned him a formal internship in the corporate strategy department despite his young age. "The metrics tell a compelling story," Eleanor noted, gesturing toward the presentation screen behind her. "Customer satisfaction has increased 32%. Employee retention has improved 41%. Discrimination complaints have decreased by 87%. And most surprisingly to industry skeptics, our profitability has increased 14% year over year." She paused as applause filled the room, allowing her gaze to travel across the diverse faces of Liberty's employees: pilots, flight attendants, ground crew, administrative staff, and executives united in celebration of their collective achievement. "But numbers only tell part of the story," Eleanor continued when the applause subsided. "The The real transformation is in the thousands of daily interactions that occur on our aircraft and in our terminals. It's in the culture that now empowers every employee to ensure all passengers are treated with equal respect. The journey to this moment had not been smooth or simple. Following the shareholder meeting and Fleming's subsequent resignation, Liberty Airlines had faced significant challenges in implementing its ambitious transformation agenda. The first months had brought resistance from middle management accustomed to Fleming's top-down leadership style. Some veteran employees had viewed the new emphasis on inclusion as political correctness rather than sound business practice. Operational disruptions had occurred as new protocols were implemented and staff adjusted to different expectations. Financial markets had initially reacted with skepticism, with several analysts downgrading the stock based on concerns about distraction from core business functions. Competitors had attempted to poach valuable employees during the uncertainty of transition. Through these challenges, Eleanor had maintained her role as special advisor to the board, providing strategic guidance while gradually recovering her health. Her medical team had initially been alarmed by her continued involvement, but over time had acknowledged that purposeful engagement in meaningful work seemed to contribute to her healing rather than hinder it. I want to recognize someone whose journey symbolizes the transformation we're celebrating today, Eleanor said, gesturing toward a woman sitting in the second row. Brenda Mitchell, would you please join me? A ripple of surprised murmurs spread through the audience as Brenda rose hesitantly and made her way to the podium. Many employees knew the story of how she had removed Eleanor from first class and how she had later disrupted the shareholder meeting with her confession. Ms. Mitchell, and I share a unique bond, Eleanor explained as Brenda stood uncomfortably beside her. We began as adversaries in a moment that reflected old patterns of discrimination. Today, we stand together as partners in creating new patterns of dignity and respect. Following the shareholder meeting, Brenda had faced disciplinary proceedings for her role in Eleanor's removal and for violating company policies by disrupting the meeting. William Turner had taken a nuanced approach to her situation, recognizing both the severity of her actions and the courage it had taken to speak out. Rather than termination, Brenda had been reassigned to help develop and implement the company's new anti-discrimination training program. Her first-hand experience with both enforcing and then challenging problematic practices made her uniquely qualified to identify blind spots and resistance points. Brenda has shown us that transformation isn't just about corporate policies, Eleanor continued. It's about personal growth and the courage to acknowledge when we've been wrong. She has helped train over 2,000 Liberty employees in recognizing and addressing unconscious bias. Brenda stepped forward to the microphone, visibly emotional. I want to thank Dr. Washington for showing a kind of grace I didn't deserve, she said, her voice wavering. When I removed her from first class, I was following unwritten rules I'd been taught. But that doesn't excuse my actions. Working on our new training programs has been a journey of healing, not just for the company, but for my own conscience. The celebration continued with presentations from various departments highlighting their contributions to the company's transformation. The customer experience team showcased their new service protocols designed to ensure consistent treatment, regardless of a passenger's appearance or background. The Human Resources Department detailed revised hiring and promotion practices that had already increased diversity in leadership positions. Captain Brandon Harris presented the Pilot Corps' new intervention guidelines, which empowered flight crews to prevent discriminatory incidents before they escalated. We've created a culture where speaking up is valued rather than punished, he explained. Our pilots now understand that safety includes psychological safety for all passengers. As the formal presentations concluded and attendees moved to the networking reception, Eleanor found a quiet corner to rest. Despite her improved health, she still tired easily, especially after emotionally charged events. Simone appeared at her side with a glass of water and concern in her eyes. You should consider going back to the hotel, Mom, she suggested gently. You've had a long day. Eleanor smiled at her daughter's protective instinct. Soon, there are a few more people I want to speak with first. Among those people was Richard Fleming, the former CEO who had fought so fiercely against her efforts. Following his resignation, Fleming had largely disappeared from public view, reportedly working on a memoir about his time in the airline industry. His unexpected appearance at the celebration had caused surprise and some discomfort among longtime employees. Eleanor had invited him personally, believing that true transformation required engagement with those who had opposed it. As she spotted him standing awkwardly near the bar, she made her way over with deliberate steps. "Mr. Fleming," she greeted him calmly. "Thank you for coming." Fleming looked considerably older than he had a year earlier, his face lined with stress and his formerly perfect hair now streaked with gray. "Dr. Washington," he replied stiffly. "Congratulations on your success." "This isn't about my success," Eleanor corrected him gently. "It's about creating an airline where everyone is treated with dignity. I hope that's something even you can celebrate." Fleming's expression remained guarded. "The financial results are certainly impressive. I wouldn't have predicted that." "Because you view dignity and profitability as competing values rather than complementary ones," Eleanor observed without rancor. "That was always the fundamental difference in our perspectives." Their conversation was brief and somewhat strained, but Eleanor considered it an important symbolic closure to their conflict. As Fleming departed shortly afterward, she felt not triumph over a defeated adversary, but a quiet satisfaction that healing could begin even in the most contentious relationships. The transformation of Liberty Airlines extended beyond its internal operations and culture. Under Eleanor's guidance, the company had established the Transportation Equity Foundation, funded by a percentage of annual profits and dedicated to addressing broader issues of discrimination in travel and transportation. The foundation had already launched initiatives to improve accessibility for disabled travelers, provide travel scholarships for disadvantaged youth, and support research into identifying and eliminating systemic barriers to equitable transportation. These efforts had positioned Liberty as an industry leader in corporate social responsibility. "Dr. Washington," called a familiar voice, interrupting Eleanor's momentary solitude. She looked up to see William Turner approaching with a young black woman in an airline pilot's uniform. "There's someone I'd like you to meet. This is First Officer Jasmine Wilson, the first graduate of our Liberty Scholarship Program to complete pilot training." Eleanor extended her hand warmly. "First Officer Wilson, it's a pleasure to meet you." "The honor is mine, Dr. Washington," Jasmine replied with evident emotion. "Your story inspired me to pursue my pilot's license when everyone told me it wasn't a realistic goal for someone from my background." This was the aspect of the transformation that moved Eleanor most deeply, the ripple effects that extended far beyond corporate policies or financial metrics. The knowledge that her stand against discrimination had opened doors for others like Jasmine gave meaning to all the struggles and health challenges she had endured. As the celebration continued, around her, Eleanor found herself reflecting on a decision she had made just days earlier after lengthy discussions with her family and advisors. After considerable thought, she had decided to transition her substantial ownership stake in Liberty Airlines to an employee stock ownership program, ESOP, effectively transferring control of the company to the people who operated it daily. The decision had been driven partly by practical considerations. At 73, Eleanor needed to consider estate planning and the legacy she would leave. But more fundamentally, she believed that lasting transformation required distributing power rather than merely transferring it from one owner to another. Under the ESOP structure, Liberty employees would gradually become the majority owners of the company, with governance mechanisms ensuring the continuation of the inclusive practices that had been established. Eleanor would maintain an advisory role during the transition but would relinquish direct control. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" Simone had asked when Eleanor first proposed the idea. "You fought so hard for this control." "I fought for transformation, not control," Eleanor had replied. "True transformation means creating systems that don't depend on any single person's presence or power." As the evening wound down, Eleanor prepared to address the gathering one final time. Her body ached with fatigue, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in months, buoyed by the tangible evidence of positive change surrounding her. "Before we conclude tonight's celebration," she began, "I want to share some news about Liberty's future. Next month, we will begin transitioning to an employee ownership structure, making Liberty the largest employee-owned airline in America. Surprised murmurs gave way to enthusiastic applause as she explained the basics of the plan. This company doesn't belong to me or to any individual investor, Eleanor continued once the applause subsided. It belongs to those who bring its values to life every day, all of you. She paused, looking out at the faces watching her, some tearful, others beaming with excitement. My journey with Liberty began with being told I didn't belong in a first-class seat. It concludes with the understanding that we all belong, that dignity isn't a luxury service, but a fundamental right. As Eleanor returned to her seat amid a standing ovation, she caught sight of Marcus watching her with undisguised admiration. In his expression, she saw the continuation of her legacy, not just in terms of business acumen or financial resources, but in the fundamental understanding that power carried responsibility, that privilege created obligation. The following morning, Eleanor boarded a Liberty Airlines flight back to Seattle, where she planned to spend more time with her family after the intense year of corporate transformation. As she settled into her first-class seat, the lead flight attendant approached with a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of the crew, Dr. Washington," she said warmly. "And this time, no one will question whether you belong here." Eleanor accepted, the champagne with a smile, noting that the flight attendant offered the same courteous service to every first-class passenger, regardless of age, race, or appearance. As the plane taxied toward the runway, she gazed out the window at the Liberty Airlines logo emblazoned on the terminal, a symbol not just of a rebranded company but of a fundamental shift in values. The captain's voice came over the intercom, and Eleanor recognized Brandon Harris's distinctive cadence. "Good morning from the flight deck. This is Captain Harris welcoming you aboard Liberty Airlines Flight 1457 to Seattle. At Liberty, we believe every passenger deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or where they're seated. That's not just our policy, it's our promise." As the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the clear blue sky, Eleanor felt a sense of completion. What had begun as a personal humiliation had catalyzed a transformation that would outlive her, a legacy not of buildings or monuments, but of dignity restored and barriers removed. The true measure of that legacy arrived a week later in the form of a letter forwarded from Liberty's corporate headquarters. It was written in a child's careful handwriting on rainbow-colored stationery. "Dear Dr. Washington, my name is Amara, and I am 9 years old. My mom showed me a video about how you bought an airline because they were mean to you. I told my mom I want to be a pilot when I grow up, but some boys in my class said girls can't be pilots, especially black girls. My mom said I should write to you because you know about fighting for what's right. Do you think I can be a pilot someday? Thank you for being brave. Love, Amara." Eleanor sat at her daughter's kitchen table, tears welling in her eyes as she read the letter. Beside her, Marcus was helping Zora with a science project, their heads bent together in concentration. Through the window, she could see Simone and Michael gardening in the backyard, working side by side in the afternoon sunshine. With slightly trembling hands, Eleanor reached for a pen and her personal stationery. "Dear Amara," she began, "not only do I believe you can be a pilot, but I know the sky is just the beginning of what you can reach." Eleanor Washington's story teaches us that individual courage can transform entire systems. When faced with discrimination, she refused to accept a token apology or compensation. Instead, she leveraged her resources to create lasting change. Her journey shows that true power comes not from seeking revenge, but from transforming broken systems into models of equity and dignity. The story illustrates how discrimination often reflects deeper organizational problems. What appeared as a single incident was actually symptomatic of systematic issues affecting countless others without Eleanor's resources to fight back. Her victory wasn't just personal, it created pathways for others facing similar barriers. Eleanor's approach also demonstrates the effectiveness of strategic action over emotional reaction. By approaching discrimination as both a moral and business problem, she created change that was both ethically right and financially sound. Her ultimate decision to transfer ownership to employees, shows that true transformation means creating systems that outlast any individual leader. Perhaps most importantly, Eleanor's journey reminds us that age and dignity are not mutually exclusive. At 72, she embarked on her most significant leadership challenge, proving that wisdom, determination, and courage recognize no age limits. Has discrimination ever made you feel powerless? Would you have found the courage to fight back, like Eleanor? Or would you have simply accepted the situation? Comment below with a time you stood up against unfair treatment, or share what you would have done in Eleanor's position. If this story of transformation inspired you, please hit that like button to help others discover Eleanor's powerful journey. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary change in the face of injustice. Share this video with someone who needs motivation to stand against discrimination in their own life. Sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to accept the status quo to inspire a movement. Thank you for joining us for Eleanor's remarkable journey from humiliation to empowerment. Remember, your voice matters, and your dignity is non-negotiable, regardless of who you are or what you look like.